AI can be an extremely powerful machine, but there is nuance to that, and that also has to be used with human decision-making processes behind it. Welcome to an episode of Hannah Hotline, and as usual, if you want to submit your Hannah Hotline scenario, you can email hello@hannahkissel.com to be featured on the podcast or in the Daily Telegraph. So today we have another juicy listener email, so let's just dive right in. Dear Hannah, I'm writing in because my CEO has lost the plot. All right, strong opening. I work in a mid-sized marketing agency, and over the past few months, our team meetings have taken a strange turn. My CEO has become almost completely reliant on AI for business decisions. This past Monday, he walked in with a crazed look in his eye as if he had stayed up all weekend on Red Bulls and AI chats and handed each of us our new AI manifesto, which was literal garbage. He takes AI-generated campaign projections as though they're gospel. They're not. AI doesn't understand the nuance of our industry, and then when things don't go as Perplexity or Claude predicted, he says it's our fault. He didn't used to be like this, and I think that AI will drive our company into the ground. I also want to note that I'm very AI forward and want to progress at work just like everyone else. But this doesn't seem like progression in technical advancement. It's more like codependency with a deranged chatbot. Is there any way to raise this with him constructively? And how do I protect my own headspace in the meantime? From Scared of the Blind Man Behind the Bot. Okay, definitely juicy one and very pertinent for right now. So a few years ago, this was very early on when I started my business, I started working with business coaches, and I actually worked with quite a few of them for different things. And I remember, at that time, I also, for context, was just coming out of burnout recovery. I was, had not worked for about a year, and my health, it was still pretty fragile at the time. And the advice that these coaches were giving was just like, hustle at all costs, like start ads, do webinars, do public speaking events, make 70 outreaches a day, give away 1 million calls for free. And I just remember every time I got on one of those calls and listened to what they did, my nervous system just was like completely shot. I felt so frantic after. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do all of these different things. And it really didn't feel good to me. And I was almost giving someone the power to govern my life. And so what is happening right now, and what I think is happening with your boss, and of course, I can't speak for your boss, but it's the real desire to feel like someone knows what to do. I can just relinquish all power because someone is going to tell me what to do. If I just follow their directions, even if it's slightly deranged, at least they know the answers. I mean, this is why, taking a bit of a dark turn here, but this is why people join cults. This is why people turn to religion. This is why people often look for something greater than themselves, and why people want to just blindly follow a guru. It's so that they don't have to necessarily think for themselves. Now, that doesn't really handle your problem about what to do with your boss, but this is to just give a bit of the psychology almost behind surrendering your own thought patterns into something greater. And that can be a plethora of different things, not just Claude or ChatGPT. So right now, really looking at where AI also is, there's so much data and research going on right now. I mean, there was a study conducted by MIT late last year, and the study was really looking at, generative AI, while it wasn't making a lot of bounds in sales and marketing, it was really supporting more back-end function, outsourcing repetitive tasks, cutting external agency costs, streamlining operations, but actually a lot of companies didn't really understand yet how to leverage AI. And when AI was used to talk about strategy, it wasn't really following suit. The results weren't really there. And AI results, it's mixed. It's really mixed right now, and this landscape is mixed. And we've got this amazing new technology that everyone is trying to harness. Now, that's not to say that AI doesn't work. And I don't want to sound like I'm debunking AI. I think that AI can be an extremely powerful machine, but there is nuance to that. And that also has to be used with human decision making processes behind it. So, what is going on, and what I'm hearing from you, listener, reader, is that you're saying all of these, everything is pretty much being outsourced to AI by my CEO, and we don't know what to do about it. So, there's a few different ways that you can approach this. Number one, I always like to start, and I spoke about this in my last Hannah Hotline on justice sensitivity, but really understanding where you are in the hierarchy. So we always want to start with, what is your level of influence? Are you someone, are you a director in this company? Are you a VP in this company? Are you a decision maker in this company? And can you actually have a conversation with your CEO where your messages can be heard? If not, then it's understanding who is your boss and what is their level of influence. Is this something that can be surfaced up? Now, I really dislike gossip in the workplace. I think as well, like, some of this stuff can start to be quite inflammatory, especially, if you and all your teammates are kind of having conversations around the fire with pitchforks about how the CEO is turning into a maniac, in AI psychosis. However, in this instance, really understanding what is the sentiment on the ground. There is often quite a separation between the C-suite and actually, the executors, or how things are actually going. Now, you say your clients are quite nuanced. If your CEO isn't really in meetings with clients, unless they're big clients, you probably understand them a little bit more than your CEO does. So really looking at, what's the sentiment among the team? How can you surface that sentiment and really get to say, like, okay, now there is concern here. Now, if you do, let's say you do have the level of influence where you can actually talk to your CEO about this, then there are a few ways to do this. So the first one is really understanding, like, how you're framing it. That's extremely important. So not framing it in terms of blame, but actually using data. So what that could look like is something like, okay, you know, AI is really great. I see that it's generated a lot of ideas. However, its last three projections have been wrong. Here's why. Here's how I think we can address this moving forward. In that, you can also change the ending and say, could you tell me how we should address this moving forward, given that these predictions don't seem to stack up, and we have told you that they probably wouldn't stack up? How can we work with this? Now, what you really want as well is to make a request here and not a complaint. And the request could be something like, okay, can we actually look at a human validation step before we just run with AI projections? Is this something we can build into in a process? And this is where a lot of organizations are actually looking at where AI fits in their decision-making process. So if we think about the RACI technique, so RACI is, the project management decision-making tree that looks at who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Now, there might need to be a bit of a decision-making matrix on AI suggestions, or on AI projections, or on AI project management, in terms of, if you're using AI as a strategy tool, understanding, well, who is ultimately responsible for that strategy? And there has to be some sort of human element. It can't just be, AI has said this, so we move forward. There has to be a human element of people who are consulted, who agree on this, and also who is going to implement it. Now, what I see going wrong here is that the workforce isn't necessarily consulted, but maybe the workforce is. Maybe your CEO has consulted VPs or directors and they're agreeing with this. If they are agreeing with this, then there's a disconnect in the organization, because this is a pretty strongly worded email in that, their AI strategy is literal garbage, as you say. So I'm guessing that not everyone in the workforce thinks that this is okay. So how do you then bring it up and surface this and actually bring in some human consultation alongside using AI as a strategy and as a tool? Now, lastly, what we want to think about as well is even incorporating, like, how can we pressure test this into situations? So how can we start to pressure test assumptions so that we're not just blindly following what Claude's saying or what Perplexity's saying? How can we validate assumptions and really being proactive and saying, if you really want to keep the peace around this, maybe there is an AI function workforce in your organization where you're looking at how to adopt, ethical AI strategies. A lot of organizations are starting to do this, especially enterprise organizations have realized that, AI is not being implemented or used in the right way. I mean, there are so many ethical things going on right now, especially if you look at consulting, law, accounting, where AI is being used unethically and there's not a lot of QA attached to it, and then it's causing a lot of damage. So if you really care about this, can you put yourself forward for, part of the AI workforce to help utilize AI in the organization? I would love to hear from you again. Keep me posted, write me an email. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well at Hannah Kissel, or on Instagram, Hannah May Kissel. And if you've got an email, if you've got a listener question, go to hello@hannahkissel.com to turn that in. And I will see you in 2 weeks.
Hannah Hotline. Email her and you'll be fine. When your brain goes bing, bang, bonka, bing, boom. Email Hannah Hotline. Email Hannah Hotline.
Hannah Hotline is sponsored by Dominic Jingles, where quirky, clever and corporate branding is reimagined. DM Dominic on Instagram at Dominic Jingles or email dominicenglish04@gmail.com.